This conference will now be recorded.
Sir, 7:30. Can I start?
Yes, you can start.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the final edition of the International Conference on Economics of Happiness and Welfare, jointly organized by Department of Economics, St. Joseph College Autonomous Irinjalakuda and Sacred Heart College, Chalakudi, Kerala, India. To mark its end in all its glory, we have with us as chief guest Dada Gunamuktananda, international professional in meditation, yoga, philosophy, and natural health sciences from USA. He'll be talking on the topic Economics of Love. Let me read out a short poem. Corona. Corona, you reminded us the power of love. You taught us the meaning of kindness, that we still stand a chance if we are together, that we are all interconnected in a zillion ways. We washed our hands frequently. We took care of our loved ones. Pace of life slowed to remind. Run or walk, you reach your grave, nevertheless the same. We still stand a chance to inherit a beautiful green earth, its fragrance and warmth. Over the course of 2 days, we dived deep into the topic, into a rarely touched but highly relevant topic in economics, especially in post-pandemic world, economics of happiness and welfare. With we had with us astute resource persons from all over the world talking to us about economics benefits of happiness, wealth and happiness in economics, love as an organization norm, economics as welfare science. Now it's time for the most awaited session of our international conference. We have the invited lecture of Dada Gunamuktananda on the topic Economics of Love. In order to officially welcome the gathering, I invite Dr. Chaco Jospi, Associate Professor and Head of Department of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudi. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Krishnagiri. The chief guest of the day, Dada Gunamuktananda, the principal of St. Joseph's College, Irinjalakuda, Dr. Sister Asha Teres, the principal of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudi, Dr. Sister Reena Itiachan, the IQAC coordinator of Sacred Heart College, Dr. Shirley Jose, head of the Department of Economics of St. Joseph's College, Ms. Daisy, other faculty members of both the departments. The economics department of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudi, and St. Joseph's College, Irinjalakuda, was very happy in organizing this conference on economics of happiness and welfare. We were listening to various resource persons who have given their reflections on various dimensions of the topic of economics of happiness and welfare. As I told you yesterday, there were many factors that motivated us to select this topic for this conference. One was the short film, The Economics of Happiness, and other was the current situation, which made us all think there is a lot of love in the world, because we see every corporate house or every individual coming up with altruistic activities to support the fellow beings during this pandemic time. I will also narrate another event that made me think of this topic. I was inspired to take up this topic for the conference based on a letter of Pope Francis, which was written in 2019 to the young economists and entrepreneurs worldwide. In that letter, Pope Francis dreams of a different kind of economy, one that brings life, not death, inclusive and not exclusive, humane, not dehumanizing, one that cares for the environment and does not despoil it. Pope Francis motivated the young economists to assemble in Assisi under the banner Economy of Francisco and enter into a covenant to change today's economy and to give a soul to the economy of tomorrow. Once we decided we will have a conference on the topic economics of happiness and welfare, I started searching for papers and paper presenters. So all of us searched the internet to find paper presenters, and immediately we found out one paper with an interesting title, Economics of Love. The paper, in a nutshell, is like this. There are currently two glaring indicators of social injustice in our present day society. One, the living standard of the poorest people is unacceptable by the standard of any civilized society. The health of society is measured by the living standard of the poorest people, not of the richest. Second, the wealth gap is absurdly high. It is currently in the order of millions, where a healthy wealth gap would conceivably be around of tenfold. These are the words of Dada Gunamuktananda, who will be speaking to us today on this topic. Based on various concepts like economic democracy, decentralized economy, cooperative industry, regional self-reliance, moral leadership, proper utilization of resources, rational distribution of wealth and resources, social progress in all spheres of life, he argues that we can achieve this if we can extend the spirit of love and welfare for our own families to all people, animals, plants, and the world as a part of our great universal family. This is the essence of economics of love, which is which is just some of the key aspects of the socio-economic paradigm introduced by mystic philosopher and social reformer and guru of Dada Gunamuktananda, Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, which he called the progressive utilization theory, or PROUT. PROUT is a theory which exposes and overcomes the limitations of both capitalism and communism. And this is not something new for someone studying economics in India, because we were following a concept of mixed economy, which also has the same objective. PROUT aims to be economically progressive and improve social development. This was the essence of the paper that I read, written by Dada Gunamuktananda, titled The Economics of Love. Dada Gunamuktananda trained in meditation, yoga, philosophy, and natural health science in Australia, the Philippines, and India. He has been a qualified meditation teacher of Anandamaga since 1995 and has taught meditation in Australia, Europe, North America, and Middle East, the Far East, and South America. He is also the founding coordinator of the P.R. Sarkar Institute. So, with this much introduction, I think I will not take more of your time. I would just like to add one sentence, that when I requested him whether he could be the keynote addresser for this conference, he readily agreed without any hesitation. And we had several email communications, and we interacted personally to think about the topic, to discuss what should be the modality of this conference. And he was always so loving in his approach that I had no hesitation that his approach of economics of love is being practiced by him. So I invite Dada Gunamuktananda to give his address.
Thank you, Dr. Chaco, for your kind words and your very gracious introduction. Thank you. I appreciate your goodwill and wishes and your very gracious introduction. Namaskar to everybody. Namaskaram. I would like to thank Dr. Chaco Jose for inviting me to speak on behalf of the Department of Economics of Sacred Heart College and the Department of Economics of St. Joseph's College. I thank the principals of those colleges, other faculty members, the organizing committee, and executive members. I also thank my esteemed co-presenters for indulging me. I am not an academic, so I am honored to be invited. I am also not an economist. I simply convey the teachings of my Gurudev, who I consider to be the master economist of the universe. I would like to, it's interesting that Dr. Chaco just now quoted Pope Francis, because my opening to my talk is a long quote from Pope Francis from his apostolic exhortation. And this is basically, I've shortened it a little bit, but it's basically it's the economic section of that publication. I will read it. It's a little bit long, but I think it's important that I read it because it says a lot. The need to resolve the structural causes of poverty cannot be delayed, not only for the pragmatic reason of its urgency, for the good order of society, but because society needs to be cured of a sickness which is weakening and frustrating it, and which can only lead to new crises. As long as the problems of the poor are not radically resolved by rejecting the absolute autonomy of markets and financial speculation, and by attacking the structural causes of inequality, no solution will be found for the world's problems, or for that matter, to any problems. Inequality is the root of social ills. The dignity of each human person and the pursuit of the common good are concerns which ought to shape all economic policies. We can no longer trust in the unseen forces and the invisible hand of the market. Growth in justice requires more than economic growth. While presupposing such growth, it requires decisions, programs, mechanisms, and processes specifically geared to a better distribution of income, the creation of sources of employment, and an integral promotion of the poor, which goes beyond a simple welfare mentality. The economy can no longer turn to remedies that are a new poison, such as attempting to increase profits by reducing the workforce and thereby adding to the ranks of the excluded. I ask God to give us more politicians capable of sincere and effective dialogue aimed at healing the deepest roots and not simply the appearances of the evils in our world. We need to be convinced that charity is the principle not only of micro relationships with friends, with family members, or with small groups, but also of macro relationships, social, economic, and political ones. Bring about a new political and economic mindset which would help to break down the wall of separation between the economy and the common good of society. Economy, as the very word indicates, should be the art of achieving a fitting management of our common home, which is the world as a whole. Each meaningful economic decision made in one part of the world has repercussions everywhere else. Consequently, no government can act without regard for shared responsibility. If we really want to achieve a healthy world economy, what is needed at this juncture of history is a more efficient way of interacting, which, with due regard for the sovereignty of each nation, ensures the economic well-being of all countries, not just a few. So the reason why I took the time to read such a long quote from Pope Francis is because I commend him for what he says and the views that he expounds, because they reflect very much the views of my own guru, Sri Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, Sri Sharanandamurti, who propounded Prout, as Dr. Chako said in his introduction. Despite the need for the message that I just read from the Pope, I believe it is a good sign that spiritual leaders such as him are now beginning to speak out against the extreme social inequality and wealth disparity of our times. My own spiritual leader and guru, Sri Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, said back in the 50s, "In the interest of living beings, as a whole, capitalism must come to an end. Capitalism cannot serve humanity, while communism failed to serve humanity. Both capitalism and communism are dying. Capitalism will die a natural death, while communism died an unnatural death." He also said, "The society needs a stir of life, vigor, and progress. And for this, Anandamarga advocates the progressive utilization." And for this, Anandamarga advocates the progressive utilization theory that Dr. Chako kindly referred to in his introduction, meaning thereby progressive utilization of all factors.
May I request the participants to mute their mic? Sorry for that interruption.
No problem. Now, a couple of years ago, a very esteemed sociologist called Emanuel Wallerstein of Yale University said, "Modern capitalism has reached the end of its rope. It cannot survive as a system. The real political struggle that is going on in the world is not about capitalism, but about what should replace it." In other words, we pretty much now have come to a consensus that there is a need for a new system, but we don't. But people, there is a question: what should that system be? We know what we don't want, but what is it that we do want? I believe we don't need to think too hard about that, because what we want is automatically falling into place in our world. It's happening right now. Just as a global shift in consciousness is happening as we speak, a parallel shift in social awareness and concern is also happening as we speak. We are in the middle of it. Just as we are in the process of replacing the outmoded materialist values of the past few hundred years with new spiritual values, we are also in the process of replacing the outmoded capitalist socio-economic system with a new socio-economic system for the well-being of all people, animals, plants, and the planet. That new socio-economic model is organically falling into place in many different forms around the world. Dr. Chaco referred to the Pope's initiative of the Assisi Group, for example. There are many other ways in which a new economics is falling into place. There's something called donut economics in Holland, which is also grabbing people's attention. There's many other forms which I believe are all reflecting in one aspect or another the progressive utilization theory, or PROUT, that my guru first introduced back in the 1950s. The spirit of this falling into place of a new socio-economic order based on love, compassion, selflessness, foresight, and sustainability is also reflected in the preamble to the Earth Charter. The Earth Charter being, of course, an international declaration of fundamental values and principles. In that preamble, it states, "We stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. As the world becomes increasingly interdependent and fragile, the future at once holds great peril and great promise. We must join together to bring forth a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice, and a culture of peace. Towards this end, it is imperative that we, the peoples of Earth, declare our responsibility to one another, to the greater community of life, and to future generations." In other words, we need to share the love and spread the wealth. So I think it's evident to us all that this is happening and this is falling into place. This is going to happen. It's just a question of time. In fact, it is already happening. We are already in the process. We are in the middle of the shift, just as we are in the middle of a great global shift in consciousness on our planet. So what I want to do now is to go through some key aspects of PROUT, the progressive utilization theory, the economics of love, which I believe will be the just and equitable socio-economic system of the future. These points that I want to go through were largely outlined by Dr. Chaco. I must say he's really done his homework in his introduction to my talk. Kudos to him, because he really he listed all the aspects that I want to go through now. I'm just going to add one or two at the beginning that I didn't include in the article that he referred to. The first is, now what are the aspects of the economics of love of the future of our society on this planet? The first is that it must, and this is the most important one, because from this one everything else stems, it must be based on spirituality, not materialism. Up till now, socio-economic systems, and particularly communism and capitalism most recently, have been based on materialism. An socio-economic system which is truly beneficial and benevolent for all people and all creatures on our planet must be based on spirituality. What do I mean by spirituality? According to the yogic philosophy that I subscribe to, the ultimate purpose of human life is spiritual fulfillment. That means the realization of our own selves as the cosmic self. This is what we call, in yoga, we call self-realization. And the essence of that realization is the fulfillment of the deepest human desire for unity, peace, and bliss. This spiritual thirst is quenched by spiritual practice, including meditation. For spiritual practice, however, first we must have mental strength and balance of mind. And for that, we must also have our physical requirements fulfilled too. A healthy mind lives in a healthy body. For spiritual practice, a healthy mind is required. And for the mind to function properly, the body must also be properly maintained. Physical requirements must precede psycho-spiritual development and elevation. So spirituality is linked to the socio-economic necessities. That's why I say that a truly benevolent socio-economic system must be based on spirituality. It must also have an outlook of cosmic inheritance and therefore cosmic fraternity. Out of the philosophy of spiritual oneness comes the concept of cosmic oneness, cosmic inheritance, and cosmic fraternity. The feeling that we are all one. We all exist within the one cosmic scheme of things. We are all part of the one cosmic family. We are one universal family. And as a family, we must take care of each and every member of that family, be it human being, be it animal, be it plant. We are all of us, all people, all creatures, all beings, part of the one with this, part of the same family. And just in the same way that each family takes proper care of their children, parents try to take proper care of their children. It's only natural, because they have such a bond of love and affection for their children. So they make sure that all their basic needs are met, that everyone has enough food, clothing, education, and medical treatment. In the same way, Prout, the progressive utilization theory, is the application of the family spirit to our larger society, recognizing that we are all part of the one universal family, and as such, we should strive to meet the needs of all people and all creatures. Next, there must be, in a truly benevolent socio-economic system, there must be truly benevolent leadership. Leadership must be moral leadership, ethical, benevolent. Leadership should be in the hands of the people who have that feeling of cosmic oneness and fraternity with all deep in their hearts. People act selfishly because they don't feel the connection between themselves and others. They don't understand how their actions ultimately affect themselves as an integral part of society and affect others. It's only those people who feel that connection with others, whose hearts feel the hearts of all, who consider the welfare, and this is a very important point. Consider now how many leaders we have in society and we have had in society in the past considered the welfare and happiness of each and every one as at least as important as their own welfare and happiness. How many leaders have had that feeling truly deep within their hearts? Perhaps we have had one or two or even a few, but not many. But going forward from this point onwards, we need, and people are recognizing also, due to the very poor example of leadership that we've been witnessing these last few years on the world stage, we realize now that going forward, we need compassionate leadership. We need ethical leadership. We need benevolent leadership. And also, another very important point is that leadership must not be vested just in one person's hands. It must be collective leadership. So for the collective good, we need collective leadership, and we need leaders in positions of authority that have strong moral integrity, exemplary conduct, and selfless dedication to the society. My guru said, social control will have to be in the hands of those who are spiritually elevated, intelligent, and brave all at the same time. Such mentally developed and spiritually elevated leaders will be known as sadvipras. Those spiritual revolutionaries who work for progressive changes in human elevation on a well thought and pre-planned basis by adhering to Dharma and Niyama, the principles of morality. Very important. Now, how to get such ethical leaders in positions of power still remains to be seen. I cannot answer how that's going to happen. What is certain, though, is that we cannot get that ethical leadership through the process of political democracy. You know, up till now, democracy has been touted as the most enlightened form of selecting our leaders. But people, just as people are also realizing the drawbacks and the inequities and the injustices of capitalism, we are also realizing now more and more that the capitalists have been using the system of democracy, of political democracy, in order to gain control of politicians. The capitalists buy the politicians, and the politicians buy the votes. It's very clear. We know that. This is plain as day. We know that this is happening. So in the system, and it's been happening for some time now. So in the system of political democracy, the process is used by those with money to obtain power. In order to get votes, the politicians use the media, and they use other forms of buying votes. I know in India, for example, I've heard that they even go around before elections distributing sacks of grains and pulses to the poor people, just in order to buy the votes for the elections. But after the elections, what happens? The poor people don't see those politicians anymore, and they don't see the promises of those politicians either. So this system of political democracy that we've been living with for the past 50 or 100 years, or whatever it's been, is not giving us the result that we really need for a benevolent society. People talked about the universal suffrage, the greatness of everybody having a right to vote. But this is not beneficial, because, like, for example, when you go for a drive, if you want to drive a car, we don't say at the age of 18 anybody can drive a car. That would be plainly dangerous. In the same way, it has been dangerous, and it has led to exploitation and injustice in our society, to give everybody the right to vote over the age of 18 in our society. Universal suffrage has been destructive. In order for political democracy to really be beneficial, it should be compartmentalized into those people who have morality, those candidates and voters who have the requisite ethical standard, the requisite morality. They follow Dharma Niyama, the principles of spiritual morality. It should be compartmentalized to those people that are educated and that can think for themselves, that are not just going to vote yes or no for a particular candidate because they get a sack of rice the day before the election. And it should also be compartmentalized into those candidates and voters who have socio-economic consciousness. They know the issues, they know the problems of the people, and they have ideas about how a truly benevolent society can come about. You know, Winston Churchill, I'm not saying that Winston Churchill was a great person of any sort. I know he had a lot of drawbacks, and his policies were not beneficial for India, far from it. But he once said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other forms we've tried. So in other words, it may be the best that we've had so far, but we can do a lot better. My guru was, my Gurudev Shri Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar. When he was a young man, he was in contact with Subhash Chandra Bose and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and M.N. Roy, the economist M.N. Roy. And he once asked them both, they both met him on one particular occasion. And he once asked them, and he asked them on that occasion, which was before the independence of India, he asked, this must have been, I think it was the early 40s that this meeting took place. And he asked them, what should India strive for first? Political independence or economic independence? Political democracy, political independence or economic independence? And Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose said political independence, and M.N. Roy said economic independence. And Baba, my Gurudev, said, yes, you are right, to M.N. Roy. It should be economic independence, but then India went the other way and fought for political independence. Of course, political independence is good. However, without economic independence, it's really of not much, maybe a little bit more advantage than being under the yoke of a colonial power, but we are still under the yoke of economic exploitation. And this is the problem. This is why people are still being exploited and oppressed in India and in all countries around the world, not just in India, but all countries around the world, because although we are no longer under the yoke of political oppression, we are still under the yoke of economic oppression and exploitation. So rather than political democracy, we need economic democracy. What do I mean by economic democracy? Economic democracy is the power of it means that economic power and decision making should be under local control. Economic power and decision making should be under local control because it's the local leaders and planners who have local sentiments, who best understand the problems of the area and are able to implement policies quickly and effectively. as opposed to centralized economic planning and production, which is inherently inefficient and leads to economic and social disparity. We saw that in communism, and we also see it in capitalism. We see all the ills of economic centralization through in capitalism. We see, for example, millions of people flocking from the villages and the towns to the cities. The cities become unlivable. I don't know about Kerala. I haven't been to Kerala, but if you go to Mumbai, if you go to Delhi, if you go to Calcutta, you will see that the social problems are enormous because of overpopulation of the cities, because of overcrowding, because of pollution, because of people having to leave their families in the villages and go to the cities. This causes all sorts of social problems: depression, isolation, substance abuse. Farmer suicide is, I'm sure you're aware, is an incredibly tragic and enormous problem in India, because this is all because of economic centralization rather than economic centralization. We need economic decentralization. Imagine a world in which, rather than overcrowding in the cities and underpopulation of the rural areas and other areas throughout the country, imagine a world in which thriving communities are spread throughout the countryside, and people are living in relatively good conditions, because there is not this inequity of distribution of population and wealth. So wealth and population and resources should not be centralized. They should be decentralized. Economic decentralization is healthiest for people, animals, plants, and the planet. We need to go from a centralized to a decentralized economy, where leaders are local people with local sentiments and planners understand the problems of the local area. Some other aspects of economic decentralization are block level planning, from the grassroots up, not from the top down. Bottom up planning. Local control and administration of all resources and industry. That includes no outsiders should be allowed to interfere with the local economy, because this is also a very big problem. Local labor. Locals should be shareholders, stakeholders, and employees in local economic enterprises. Locally produced commodities should be given priority in the marketplace. There should be no importation of locally available goods. This is another problem that has been a problem since the days of the Britishers in India, where they used to take the cotton back to their mills in the UK, make products, and sell them back to people in India. And this is still happening on a much wider scale today, where commodities that could otherwise be produced locally are being imported and bought from the far reaches of the earth. This is unsustainable. One of the many aspects that's causing the unsustainability and the inequity of our current system. Local raw materials should be used. There should be minimum importation of raw materials, and if there are raw materials available locally, those raw materials should be used rather than importing them. So, in other words, we must keep as much wealth and resources as possible in each local area. This gives local self-sufficiency, with localities coordinating and cooperating with each other vertically as well as horizontally. Now, this brings us to the concept of regional self-reliance. You know, we've heard the word globalization, we've heard the word free trade. These are just feel-good catchphrases that have been imposed on us, that have duped us into thinking that these phenomena, globalization and free trade, are good. No, they're not good. Free trade is not free. What happens in free trade, for example, is the richer countries set up a system where they can exploit the poorer countries under the banner of free trade. They impose tariffs which are in favor of trade going their way rather than the way of the poor countries. So true globalization not only means bringing people of all cultures together in a global society, which hasn't been part of the concept of globalization, which has been imposed on us by rich countries, by the way. They have not been concerned about the welfare of all peoples and all countries in the world. No, they've only been concerned about their own socio-economic welfare, and not even concerned about the welfare of their own people. In the United States, they have such a terrible problem of homelessness now. You know, in the largest economy of the world, in the presumably so-called richest economy of the world, to see so many homeless and disaffected and alienated people is it's not a reflection of a healthy economy or a society at all. It's a reflection of an unhealthy society. It's a reflection of a sick society. The true reflection of a healthy society is the wealth of the poorest people, not the wealth of the richest people. So globalization means not only bringing people of all cultures together in a global society, but also respecting each local culture and empowering local people. It's summed up by phrases such as universal in spirit, but regional in application, or globalize humanity, localize the economy, think globally, act locally. These are good catchphrases that can work if we really put them into practice. So rather than relying on goods, services, labor, and resources from far off points of supply and distribution, imagine the world full of vibrant, thriving, largely self-contained cooperative communities spread throughout the countryside. In Prout, we call this concept the concept of samaj. Samaj, of course, is the Sanskrit word for society. And in the real sense of the term, it means the collective body of those engaged in social progress being the marching of all together in unison, inspired by the same ideology towards a common goal. So the concept of samaj, or self-sufficient socio-economic zones, is a very important one. We also use the Sanskrit word samaj in relation to self-sufficient socio-economic zones. So being a member of a particular samaj would not depend on one's birthplace, nationality, or any other limiting factor. It would only depend on the feeling of anybody that wants to be a part of that samaj. They must have the feeling that they're merging their own socio-economic interest with the socio-economic interest of the concerned samaj. It shouldn't be like, for example, the concept of the share market and shareholders today. it's not that a company is representing the well-being, the welfare of the particular country in which it's based. It's not that its shareholders are shareholders because they want the welfare and the well-being of the people of the particular area which the company that they're investing in is based. No, the bottom line is money, and that's all they care about. So that's another thing that we have to get past. We have to get past this concept that we've been living under, where shareholders have been exploiting the market and exploiting the people, exploiting the laborers of the particular companies and societies that they're investing in. This brings us to the concept of cooperative industry. Now, researchers have found that the human, this is quite interesting, the human immune system is physically compromised by selfish actions and strengthened by cooperative actions. So just as a healthy human body is strengthened by cooperative actions, a healthy human society must also be cooperative rather than competitive. There may be some healthy competition, but the feeling must be primarily of cooperation, not of competition. Cooperation must supersede competition for sustainability. This is a natural law. In order to survive, a species must be primarily cooperative, not competitive. So we need to shift the emphasis from corporate, I'm fond of using this little phrase here now, we need to shift from corporation to cooperation, from corporate to cooperative industry, from Wall Street to Main Street. So according to Prout, cooperatives are the best expression of human sweetness in the physical realm because they function as units of coordinated cooperation. Each member has the feeling of oneness with the job because he or she contributes directly to the operation and decision-making process of the cooperative. Each member gets ample opportunity for the development of his or her latent potentialities. Each member has, rather than slaving under an employer that they have to slave for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day and then go home tired and then do it all again the next day. Each member has the feeling of ownership because he or she owns shares in the cooperative according to land, capital, or equipment contributed. So in this concept of cooperatives, people will get shares according to what they contribute, and that contribution doesn't necessarily need to be money. It can be land, it can be equipment, it can be labor. So it's according to the value of their contribution. The wealth and resources of many individuals are combined for the benefit of the co-op as a whole. For example, the utilization of land is maximized in this way. We know, for example, that a boundary land, the more boundary land there is in any agricultural enterprise, the more wastage of the land there is, because that boundary land cannot be utilized properly. The more we can amalgamate land and minimize boundary land, the more advantageous it is, because that boundary land can also be used as agricultural land. So the wealth and resources of many individuals combined into the enterprise of a cooperative is very beneficial for the wealth and well-being of those individuals, because it leads to the optimal production and distribution of goods and services. Incidentally, cooperatives, of course, there are cooperatives in today's society, and there have been in the last 100, 200 years, whatever. But for cooperatives to really thrive and be successful, they need to be operating in a decentralized economy, not the centralized economy that we've been laboring under these last 100 or 200 years. We need to have a decentralized economy for cooperatives to really shine and to really thrive. Other essential factors for the operation of cooperatives are morality, a strong administration, and a wholehearted acceptance of the system amongst all the members of the co-op. The next point, there must be proper utilization of resources. Now, the politicians and the capitalists are fond of telling us, for example, that overpopulation is a big problem in our world today, and that we don't have enough resources, to feed everybody, that we don't have enough resources to provide a decent standard of living to everybody. This is rubbish. This is what they tell us in order to assuage us, in order to pacify us. This is what they tell us in order to justify the system of capitalism that has been exploiting us for the last 100, 200, 300 years, whatever it's been. We do, in fact, have enough resources for our population. We have enough resources for 10 billion people in the world, not just the 7 billion or the 8 billion that we currently have. We probably have enough resources for 15 billion people in the world. The problem is not under supply of resources. The problem is the misutilization of resources, misutilization and misdistribution of resources. There are enough resources on our planet for more than our current population if production is sustainable, renewable resources are maximized, and production is, and this is a very important point here, production is primarily according to need or consumption rather than profit. If production is for profit, which it has been in the last 100 years or so, then we see the result of that there is a huge misutilization of resources in producing goods and services that people don't really need or even want. The production for profit has been used in order to convince people that they want goods and services that they don't really want or need, and the only good those goods and services do is increase the profits of the ones that are selling them. And in the meantime, the world's resources get depleted and misutilized. There should also, not only should there be a proper utilization of the world's wealth and resources, but there should also be a rational distribution of wealth and resources. So scarcity in our world is not only due to misutilization, but also misdistribution. We need a world in which there is not necessarily equal distribution of wealth and resources, but an equitable distribution of wealth and resources, according to people's needs and according to people's real necessity. The needs and necessity of people and also communities. We can see I don't think we've ever had such an extreme disparity of wealth and resources as we are currently witnessing today. When I got up this morning and I started to think about presenting this talk, I hadn't thought of it before, but the image of now I've forgotten his name. I think he's the wealthiest man in India. He's built his house in the middle of a slum in Mumbai. And I saw a photo of it once. I should actually go back and search for it. It's the most expensive residential dwelling in the world, and it stands in the middle of a slum. And I don't think there's a more graphic example of the obscene disparity of wealth in our world as that. The wealth of the wealthiest is of the order of billions times more than the wealth of the poorest people in our society. The poorest people in our society have nothing. They are living in dirt. They are living in such extreme poverty that it's just unimaginable how people live. We see it every day on the streets, when we walk in the streets. If we compare that to the wealth of the wealthiest in the society with the order of billions and billions of dollars, this situation is clearly it's not only not sustainable, it's downright wrong. Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, my Gurudev who propounded Prout, he actually said that this mentality of over-accumulation, that leads to such extreme wealth disparity and resource disparity in our society, is actually a psychic disease. It's an illness. So, and it's an illness which not only affects the poor people, but it also affects those that have that illness. It affects the people with too much as well, because they are also not happy. They also don't have a meaning in their lives other than that of accumulating more and more money. So they can also not be happy. The poor cannot be happy because they don't have enough, and the wealthy can also not be happy because they have too much. It affects them also, even though it's a psychic disease that compels them to accumulate more and more and more. They don't realize it, but it impacts their own health and well-being as well. Not to speak of what to speak of karmically, in terms of not only this life but future lives as well. So, according to Prout, first of all, the minimum requirements of life, of food, clothing, shelter, education, and medical treatment, must be guaranteed to all through full and meaningful employment. And if someone is not able to work through disability or old age or whatever other means, there should be adequate social security as well. So there must be a minimum in our collective economic, socio-economic house. We must have a floor and we must have a ceiling. The floor is that there must be minimum requirements of life guaranteed to everybody through meaningful employment and social welfare. And the ceiling is that there must be a ceiling on individual and corporate wealth. We cannot rely on the goodwill of everybody to limit their own wealth for the good of others. We've seen that now. We cannot rely on that. So in a truly benevolent socio-economic system, there must be a floor, a minimum level for everybody, and there must also be a ceiling, a maximum level for everybody. And if that is the case, that will mean that there will be, I'm not saying that there will be an equal distribution of wealth, but there will be a more equitable distribution of wealth according to people's needs and according to people's ability to work. Those that have more ability and who contribute more, of course, should have more incentive in the form of more wealth and privileges and a congenial environment to do more good work. So there should be a wealth gap, but it should not be in the order of millions or billions. It should be a reasonable wealth gap, which provides all with their needs and also caters to it gives people motivation and incentive to do more good work and to contribute more to society. But as we evolve as a society, as we get more, as we develop as a benevolent society, ideally that wealth gap should also decrease. So ultimately, we get to a place where the maximum number of people are enjoying the maximum number of amenities and collective wealth. So basically, through a redistribution of wealth with a wealth floor and a wealth ceiling, we can get to an equitable redistribution of wealth, which will give people a much better individual life and also collectively give us a much better collective life. It would mean, for example, that along with modernization and mechanization, for example, more and more robots and things like that are coming that are really coming into being now in our society, it would mean that people would work less, but still have enough money to have all their needs and requirements met, because they would get paid more, because there's due to a redistribution of wealth we don't have all that wealth stuck under the mattresses of the rich people anymore. We have it available for people, so people can work less with more money. We have a better standard of living, more time and for family, for leisure, for a much better standard of living and a much better collective standard of society. So this brings us, I've almost got to the end of my talk. So in general, we need a socio-economic system that is going to contribute to our overall social, individual, collective, and social well-being and progress. And progress not only
You have to unmute yourself, Dada. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
For how long was I muted?
No, just because there was some disturbance, the easiest way for me to solve it is to mute all.
Okay.
When I mute, you also get muted, that's why. Okay.
So it was just in the last few seconds or so. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you know, progress is not only physical, it's also psychic and it's also spiritual. And as human beings on this planet, We are moving now, as I said in the beginning, we are moving very rapidly towards a more and more progressive, more and more enlightened consciousness, and also a more and more progressive society. And that progress is in the physical realm, it's in the psychic realm, and it's in the spiritual realm. So as just as, for example, a tree has the freedom to grow, but the responsibility to give fruit and shade. For every privilege, there is an obligation. I know this feeling is more prevalent in India and in the East than it is in the West. But for true human progress, for real progress on our planet, we all have to have this feeling, the feeling of the tree, that we need the freedom to grow and to progress. But that freedom also comes with an obligation to all the others in society. We need to have a society where we have all our needs met. We have the scope to develop our latent potentialities. We have the scope to do everything that we dream of doing, to study, to learn, to create, to bring up our families, our children in a conducive environment for their development and for their growth and for their education. We need a society which gives us all that, but we also need to have the feeling that with our own personal growth, we also have to contribute to the social growth, to the growth of others, and to the growth of the society as a whole. Just as a tree has the freedom to grow, but also it has the responsibility to give back. So therefore, Prout is a total response to human needs, the balanced development of all human potentialities, physical, psychic, and spiritual. There is an economist, he's the founder of liberation theology in South America, Leonardo Boff. He's from Brazil, and he said, Prout is very important for grassroots groups and for all those who yearn for a liberation which starts from economies and opens to the totality of personal and social existence. Prout embodies a progressive socialism for a truly progressive human society. And I just want to finish now by quoting, it's very interesting that the name of this conference is the Economics of Happiness and Welfare Conference. And this really struck me when I first read it, because my Gurudev, Sri Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, he outlined Prout in a series of sutras, Sanskrit sutras. And the last of those sutras, I'll read it in Sanskrit, Pragatishila Upayoga Tatvara Midang Sarvajana Hitartan Sarvajana Sukartam Pracharitang. It means this is the progressive utilization theory propounded for the happiness and all-round welfare of all. So that last sutra in which he defines the progressive utilization theory, you adopted for the name of this conference. So I'm very happy. I think it's, I don't think it's coincidental. I think it's an auspicious sign that that there is that we're in sync. there is a synergy between uh, uh, all the different people in the world today, including yourselves, including, for example, the Assisi group that that Pope Francis set up in Italy. There are so many different groups around the world, and that are organically putting into place what will be the economics of love, the socio-economic, the benevolent socio-economic system and model of the future. And I believe that we are all in synergy, because with our evolution of human consciousness, we are coming together psychically, as well as more psychically, more physically, more spiritually, more and more and more. We are becoming closer and closer and closer in our ideals, in our beliefs, and in our love and regard and care for one another. So I thank you all for indulging me and listening to me, and I'm very happy to have been invited to speak to you all. Namaskar. Actually, something else just came to mind. I can finish with a short story. In 1979, my Gurudev visited Europe, and he was in Switzerland, and a Swiss devotee asked him. His 5-year-old daughter was standing next to him as he asked this question to my Gurudev. He asked, "Will we see this new economic system in our lifetimes?" And Baba pointed to his daughter, pointed to him, and said, "You won't." But then he pointed to his 5-year-old daughter and said, "But she will." That was in 1979. She was 5 years old now, then. So if we do the maths, it means that within the next 20 or 30 years, we will see a significant change in a significant move, if not a full shift, towards a more a completely benevolent and non-exploitative socio-economic system in our society. In other words, we will replace capitalism within the next 20 or 30 years.
Krishnagiri, you can proceed with the Dada, would you like to interact, or can we conclude?
Sure, whatever you like. If anybody has any questions, or I don't know if we have any time left. But,
yeah, we have a couple of questions. We'll take a quick Q&A session.
Sure.
Yeah, Krishnagiri, can you read out the questions? Okay.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Okay, please read out the question.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are. You are audible.
Okay. Dada, the first question is, okay. Unless there is a mass awakening, the system of economic democracy seems difficult. So, do you believe the first step should be awakening? But in a system where quality education is itself a question, how should one go about it? The question is from Basil Behanan Baby. Is the question clear?
I think the two are happening in parallel. It's true that for an enlightened future, we need enlightened leaders and we need an enlightened system. But I think that the two are when I say enlightened, I don't mean fully enlightened. I mean a more enlightened. So we need more enlightened leaders, and we need a more enlightened world in general. But I believe that the two are happening in parallel. That as we become more enlightened, more socially conscious, more benevolent and compassionate and empathetic towards other people and other countries and the whole world in general, in parallel to that, we are, just as a matter of course, automatically, it means that we are also developing, we're also putting into place the socio-economic system of the future. So I think it's, you know, it reminds me of a story. Once somebody asked Baba, my Gurudev, should we not do meditation first, get enlightenment, and then help the people? He said, no, you should do both at the same time. The people cannot wait for you to get enlightenment. we cannot wait for us all to become enlightened to to get to a state where we first, because to become enlightened, as I said in the beginning, we need to do spiritual practice, to fulfill ourselves spiritually. We need physical and mental resources. We need to be fulfilled physically and mentally, but so that we can work on our spiritual fulfillment. So these two things must go in parallel. One cannot go before the other. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Dada. That the question was very well answered. The other question, is it possible to bring economic without community? A related question is, in the egalitarian society is a theoretical concept and it is hard to achieve in practical life. So what are your suggestions to remove inequalities?
Oh, well, you know, as I said in the beginning, I'm not an economist, and I have simply been talking about the teachings of my Gurudev. Now, he didn't say how this is going to happen. How we have to figure this out now. We have to figure out how, practically speaking, we are going to put into place a compassionate economy of love. We have to figure out, I have no idea how we are going to get compassionate, ethical leaders into power. All I know is I believe it will happen, because I believe my Gurudev gave the system. I don't believe he would have given the system if he didn't believe it wouldn't eventually fall into place. So all I know is that it will fall into place. I believe the time span is in the next 20 or 30 years. But I don't know how it will happen. All I can say is that we just have to keep trying. We have to keep having these meetings, trying to, of course, through social media is a double-edged sword. It has its disadvantages, but it also has its advantages. Through social media, people are a lot more aware, a lot more connected. We're working together, even if we're not together physically, remotely, we're still working together for a better world. And I believe that this is, as I said in the beginning, this is happening as we speak. This is coming together. I don't know how, I can't say how we can accelerate it or bring it sooner, but I believe it's happening as we speak, and it's coming together. We just need to keep trying, keep talking, and not only keep talking, but acting as well. We need to do more actions for the welfare of society, as well as talking about how we can implement those actions and the system in general.
Thank you, Dada. We have one final question from Bhadra Balraj. The question is, how can we identify and build love in organizations and workplaces?
Primarily through, I believe meditation is the primary practice, through spiritual practice in general. Now, when I say spiritual practice, I'm not saying that spiritual practice is the property of any one religion. I believe spiritual practice is for all people of the world, of all religions, of all culture, of all communities. Spiritual practice meaning, in essence, finding God within oneself. And in finding God within oneself, recognizing God in everyone else. Now, the more and more we find God, we find the infinite, we find the cosmic consciousness within ourselves, we feel that our own consciousness is one with the cosmic consciousness of the universe, with the mind of God. We feel that our own mind is one with the mind of God. The more we feel automatically that we are one with everybody and everything. The more we feel that we are one with everybody and everything, automatically the more love we will have towards everybody and everything. So the key is spiritual practice, and that includes, this is another talk altogether, but that includes all the aspects of yoga such as asanas, jama niyama, eating good food, proper food, service to others, singing kirtana, but primarily it includes meditation. And meditation means closing your eyes and looking on a daily basis, looking within yourself and finding God within yourself. And then automatically that leads to finding God in everyone else as well. So that's the key. If you would like to learn meditation, go to anandamarga.org or let me know and I will refer you to your local meditation teacher. As I said in the beginning.
Thank you so much, Dada. With that, we come to the... Oh, sorry. Continue. Continue,
As I
please.
said in the beginning, spirituality must be the base. Spirituality meaning the feeling of godhood within oneself and within all others. That must be the base. If that is the base, if that is the foundation, then everything else will follow. Automatically, if one feels God within oneself and within everyone else, automatically one will have love for everyone and everyone else.
Sir,
Yes.
during this pandemic situation, some people are economically well off. Do you think during this situation also they are happy?
I don't think that just because they're economically well off, they're any happier than anybody else. As I said before, the people with a lot of wealth and resources are not necessarily happy. They're also suffering. Do you think, for example, with the richest man in India, when he looks out from his window and sees the slums below him, do you think he would be happy? I don't think he would be happy. Perhaps he would be superficially happy if he is mean-minded, but I think deep within his heart, he has pain to see that. So I don't think. Okay, it may afford money, wealth, and resources may afford a certain degree of comfort, but comfort is cold comfort. What we really want as human beings, as a society, is love in our hearts. We cannot have love in our hearts if we see our sisters and brothers suffering. So in regard to the pandemic, of course, we have to try to make everyone's situation more comfortable and more so that everyone has the everything that they need, including medical care if they have if they are suffering from the effects of the pandemic. But ultimately, what is really going to give us happiness is love in our hearts, not the cold comfort that money can buy.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Krishnagiri, you can invite Nijil sir to propose word of thanks. I think she has lost connection. So thank you so much, Dada Gunamuktananda, for that illuminating session. We really got insights into the economics of love and how it can be practiced in the real world. Now we come to the conclusion of this valedictory function. May I request the seminar coordinator, Mr. Nijil Jacobi, to propose the word of thanks.
Thank you, Chagu sir. Respected Chief Guest, Dada Gunamuktananda, International Professional in Meditation, Yoga, Philosophy, and Natural Health Sciences, USA. Dr. Chaku Jospi, Associate Professor and Head and Conference Convener, and my dear participants from all over the world, very greetings to all. Our two-day international conference was started with a question: how can we live a happy life in the stressful and pandemic days? Or is there any magical key to open the door of happiness successfully? And this is one of the reasons behind the designing of this international conference, jointly organized by the Department of Economics, Sacred Heart College, Chalakudi, and St. Joseph's College, Autonomous, Irinalakuda, Kerala, India, since this current situation is almost same all over the world. I'm here to propose the vote of thanks. Without any delay, let me come to my duty. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the the principals of both colleges, Dr. Sister Asha Therese and Dr. Sister Rina Itiachan, for their support and wishes to make this international conference alive. Thank you, sisters, for your constant supports and inspirations. I hope this final session was the eagerly awaited session of our two-day international conference, when Dada Gunamuktananda, International Professional in Meditation, Yoga, Philosophy, and Natural Health Sciences from Chile, accepted our invitation and consented to speak on economics of love. We were sure that it would add a lot of energy to our international conference. I'm sure we had a momentous session today. How beautifully he speaks. Every word you said was touching our hearts. We are very proud to have you as a resource person who is known all over the world. Thank you so much from the bottom of heart for making this day so inspirational and thoughtful. And thank you for accepting our invitation and spending so much of your precious time with us. Thank you. And I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Chaku Jospi, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Economics and Conference Convener of Sacred Heart College, Chalakudi. To be frank, he is the real master brain behind this coordination and execution of this international conference. It is because of his consecutive effort that we have got eminent resource person to this two-day international conference. Thank you, sir. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Shirley Joske, IQAC Coordinator and Associate Professor of the Department of Economics, Sacred Heart College, Chalagudi, for her constant support, and Dr. Daisy PK, Head of the Department of Economics, St. Joseph's College Autonomous, and our conference convener for her NGOs at all levels of the conference. Thank you, ma'am. I also thank Ms. Jamal Thomas, Assistant Professor of Economics and Webinar Coordinator from St. Joseph's College Autonomous, for her indispensable assistance and also the technical supports throughout the event. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I wish to thank all the participants of this international conference. As I said yesterday, we have more than 800 participants from various parts of the world participating through GoToMeeting and YouTube live streaming. From Bangladesh, Bhutan, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Oman, Pakistan, Philippines, UAE, USA, and India. You have been with us since yesterday morning. This program
right? Should we have an ongoing budget for IT support? Like Didi, you have an IT guy. He should be working in some computer company that.
Sorry, I think.
I'm sorry.
Sorry for the inconvenience.
Sorry for that.
Okay. And this program will not be successful without you. Thank you all for your presence throughout the sessions. I also extend my appreciation to Krishna Gidi NS, chairperson of our college and our final year degree student of the Department of Economics, who is the host of this conference. She handled it very well. Thank you, Krishna Gidi, for playing your part wonderfully. Once again, I extend my gratitude to all the invited speakers of all our sessions, presenters, and all the participants of this two-day international conference. I wish you all a very happy day ahead. Thank you. Over to you, Krishna Gidi.
I would also like to thank Mr. Nigel Jacobi for all the support he provided in the organization of this conference.